Now, for people who already have the game, you probably already know this, but obviously the impact of the coronavirus pandemic is in the new Football Manager. And as an end result, this does mean that in your first season, you're more than likely going to be working with a very, very small transfer budget, if any. And because of this, you need to be very, very shrewd in your transfer business and the players you get in. Now, obviously, because of the small transfer budget that you're probably going to have, there's probably not a lot of players you're going to be able to attract, and chances are a lot of clubs are not going to want to be able to sell either. And because of this, free transfers have sort of come to the forefront of most people's saves, especially in the first year. Once you get into the second year, things slowly start to recover. But there are a lot of very interesting free transfers in this year's game. And for today's video, I have compiled a list of the top 10 that I think are going to have the most impact on your save early on in the game, so that you can potentially change your mid-table side to maybe a promotion pushing side, or maybe even a title winning side. So let's get into it. Hopefully you enjoy it. Okay, so for ease of access, what I've done is I've put all 10 players on the screen now for you, so that if you're not entirely interested about seeing the attributes and seeing their wage demands, so you can just go over to the game yourself and have a look at these players, then that's absolutely fine. But if you are a little bit more interested in what these players do have to offer, then do stick around, as we will be going through their obviously attributes, what wages they potentially may ask for, and obviously the reputation of the player, because ultimately the reputation of the player and the reputation of your club is going to have a massive impact on whether or not these players do want to come to you. Now, as well, what I've tried to do is I've tried to get a good mixture of players, because chances are if I got 10 midfielders or 5 defenders, 5 attackers, and no defenders or goalkeepers, some people are going to be missing out on some really good free transfers. So what I've tried to do is I've essentially tried to make sort of like a 10 squad, like a balanced squad here, with a goalkeeper, with defenders, midfielders and attackers, so that you all get a mixture of players to potentially scout and potentially get into your side. So enough of the introduction. Let's kickstart. Let's kickstart things off with HEURELHO GOMES. Okay, so starting things off, we do have HEURELHO GOMES, obviously the previous Premier League goalkeeper, and plenty of experience under his belt as well. And as you can see from his attributes, he's a very, very good goalkeeper, and someone that if you are a recently promoted side, or if you are a mid-table side and you're potentially looking for a backup goalkeeper, Gomes here definitely fits the bill very, very well. Obviously at 39 years old, however, he probably doesn't have many years under his belt. He obviously, maybe you might get 1 or maybe even 2 years if you're lucky out of him. So you definitely don't want to obviously pin all of your hopes on Gomes here as your first choice goalkeeper. Now, in terms of his initial wage demands, he is looking for around 20k. Now, this is very much easy to meet for most Premier League sides. Obviously, if you're in the likes of the Championship or League One or other divisions that perhaps don't have that financial might behind them, meeting these demands might be initially difficult, but I'm sure with a little bit of negotiating, getting a few bonuses there, Gomes will sort of lower his demands a little bit, and potentially could get yourself an absolutely fantastic keeper in your side. Obviously with that 15 passing, 16 one-on-ones, 18 throw-in, he's a very, very good distributor of the ball, and obviously very good communication in 13 as well. The only issue is that 16 eccentricity, which potentially could be an issue. Obviously he's very prone to doing, let's say, the most wild of things. So you potentially have to try and iron some of them things out of his game. But overall, a very, very good keeper. I'd heavily recommend getting this guy in, especially as a backup. Definitely do a really good job. Okay, the first of the 3 defenders that we are going to be looking at today is the ex-Real Madrid star of EZEQUIEL GARAY. Now, first things first, obviously, the biggest thing that we're both going to be looking at is that age of 33 years old. He is obviously on the later stages of his footballing career, and once again, the same with Gomes. You're probably going to be very lucky to get maybe 1 or 2 seasons out of him, so you don't want to be pinning all of your hopes on this guy to win you a title or get you promoted, but someone that can definitely lead the back four with that 13 leadership. Obviously, he's relatively slow with that 10 pace and 10 acceleration, but he is a very good defender of the ball, as you'd expect from a defender. 16 heading, 16 marking, and 15 tackling. And he's an okay passer of the ball, so you could potentially deploy him in that ball-playing defender role if you wanted to. Obviously, you can see the star ratings on the left-hand side of positions that he most likes or is most suited to play in, and he's pretty much suited to all of them roles. So he's very sort of good player to have on your side, because you can sort of put any role on him and he'll do it relatively well. Now, obviously, with Garay playing at some of the biggest clubs in Europe, the likes of Madrid and Valencia, you'd expect his wage demands to be pretty unrealistic. However, with only 31k initial wage demands, once again, you could potentially negotiate this lower. That isn't that high for someone that will probably improve your backline, especially if you're a mid-table side or if you're looking to get promotion once again. But I'm sure you'd be able to get that lower with a little bit of negotiating. So once again, with Garay, not someone that you want to specifically build your side around, but someone that you can definitely get a good year out of. Reliable, good leader as well. The pace and accelerating a little bit of an issue, but other than that, a very, very good defender and very well rounded as well. So we've sorted our goalkeeper and centre back position out. Now we want someone on the wing that's going to be able to fly up the pitch and get them crosses in for your attacking players. And there is no better player, in my opinion, that is currently a free transfer than DARYL JANMAAT. Obviously, former Premier League player as well, so plenty of experience under his belt. And if you look at them stats are absolutely fantastic for a 31-year-old, obviously capped by the Netherlands as well, 34 times. Unfortunately, no goal for DARYL, which is a bit of a shame. But if you look at them stats, 14 dribbling, 14 crossing, he has 12 pace, 13 acceleration, relatively quick as well, and his mentals are pretty decent. Obviously, once again, another leader in the dressing room. So if you really are lacking leaders, then you're going to have plenty if you sign any of these boys that we have on this list. But overall, DARYL JANMAAT, he's definitely someone that I think can improve most sides. Once again, you can't pin your hopes on this guy at more than 2 or 3 years. Obviously, you're going to get more time out of DARYL because only being 31, he's probably got 2 or 3 years left under his belt before he seriously starts declining. And if you look at his versatility as well, he can play centre-back, he can play left-back, he can play left wing-back, he can also play CDM as well if absolutely needed. And then wage demands aren't too ridiculous either. Once again, I honestly thought going into this that all these players that I have would be 50, 60, 70, 80k sort of players, but apparently not. DARYL just wants a measly 20k, and 20k for a player that I think would improve most sides, and definitely a very, very solid backup for most top division sides as well. I'd get this guy in, honestly. This guy is fantastic, and for them small demands as well, you never know, you could be lucky and someone might come in for him in a year's time and take him off your hands for a little bit of money. So definitely a win-win overall, I think. So a fullback friend for DARYL JANMAAT here in, I'm going to butcher this name horrendously, so I do apologise in advance, is KWADWO ASAMOAN, a left back, 31 years old, and very similar to JANMAAT in terms of his stats. Obviously has fantastic dribbling and crossing, so definitely an attacking role that you potentially want to put on this guy if you want to make the most out of them for dribbling and crossing. Obviously relatively quick as well, definitely quicker than DARYL, which probably isn't much of a compliment, but 13 acceleration, 14 pace. That 10 stamina is potentially an issue, which means he maybe isn't going to be able to go up and down the pitch as much as you like if you're a very high intensity side. However, I have seen a lot of people raving about this guy on the new Football Manager, saying that he's an absolute bargain for a free. And once again, because he's relatively young, but because he's obviously not incredibly old in terms of footballing age at only 31. You could potentially once again sell him at the end of the year if he hadn't had a massive impact on your side. But he's capped massively by his country as well. 74 caps with a few goals under his belt as well. The only issue, well, there's two main issues I think with ASAMOAN here. One is that versatility. He can only really play on the left. He can apparently play centre midfield as well. However, the fact that he can't play across the back line could potentially be a little bit of an issue if you are, well, the reason you're watching this is because you don't have a massive budget. So potentially someone that you can't really someone that can't play across the back line, potentially an issue if you don't have that many defenders. And the second issue with ASAMOAN here is them absolutely, there's only one way to put it, astronomical wage demands at £80,000. Who does he think he is? Like 80,000 quid? Are you off your barnet here, mate? But the wage demands, coupled with the fact that he's 31 years old, perhaps, although he is a very, very good player, I personally think that unless you can get his wage demands down, 80k for someone that you're perhaps not going to be able to sell unless you're very lucky and is going to be with your side for at least 2 or 3 years, having 80k on your budget without getting rid of it could potentially be a little bit of an annoyance, especially if you're wanting to get new players in after the first season, which chances are you are going to be wanting to. But overall, his stats are very, very good, but unless you can get them wage demands down, I would definitely suggest perhaps getting JANMAAT in there, or potentially trying to get a loan in. Okay, so with all the defenders out of the way, we are now onto the midfielders. And this midfield list for me is the one I'm most proud of. 3 absolute giants of the Premier League, sort of. Well, definitely one is an absolute giant of the Premier League, but 3 players that have plenty of Premier League experience. And there's only one person that I want to start with. And some of you might be surprised at the fact that he's on this list. But hear me out. It is YAYA TOURE. That's right, YAYA TOURE. Obviously, absolute legend of the Premier League. Absolute fantastic player back in his heyday. And I know that you're all looking at his physicals and saying he can't run, which you are definitely right. But if you look at their mentals and you look at them technicals, I feel like the mentals and technicals are so good that you can't ignore them. And at only 4.3k wage demands as well, most teams are going to be able to afford YAYA here. And obviously the only issue you may encounter could be, obviously, because he's played for some of the biggest teams in the world, he potentially may not want to go to a low league side, just because of the reputation he has. But I'm sure if you offered him quite a bit of money, more than he's asking, I'm sure he'd be more than happy to drop to a side that perhaps he initially isn't that interested in. But if we focus on them technicals, if you look at that 16 technique, 17 passing, obviously the mental of 16 vision and 17 composure, obviously once again another leader in the dressing room. If you put this guy next to a trio in a trio midfield, asking to be like a deep line playmaker or something along them lines, and just get a very mobile play next to him, YAYA here could be a game changer in terms of unlocking opposition defences that are quite stubborn. And yeah, YAYA here I think is a great bargain, especially for his wage demands as well. A really, really good backup and potentially a first teamer for most mid-table relegation fighting sides. Definitely someone you want to get in. And once again, a massive presence in the dressing room, which you definitely need if you are going to be fighting throughout the next year in terms of not getting relegated or wanting to get promoted. So the next midfielder to potentially partner YAYA TOURE in your side is going to be the one and only Arsenal reject, Jack Wilshere. And once again, this guy, although he has an absolute horrendous history of injuries, at 28 years old, Mr. Jackie Boy here is a fantastic bargain, and he'd be able to fit in most sides as a first teamer with them stats as well. As I said, that injury list he has, or the injury proneness he has, definitely an issue. But if you look at their mentals, them technicals, and his physicals are okay as well. Obviously his natural fitness, jumping reach and strength aren't great, but everywhere else, his pace, stamina, balance, agility, acceleration, all relatively good. And he's quite versatile as well. Obviously he can play across the midfield line, left mid, right mid, CDM, centre mid, left wing, right wing and cam. So once again, very versatile and useful player. And with them wage demands of 26k. Nothing absolutely ridiculous here by Jack. Once again, you negotiate it probably to about 20k, maybe 15 if you're lucky, depending on the reputation of your manager. But yeah, someone here that, although he's a little bit of a risk, because obviously you could get him, he could be injured for 6 months and then you're stuck with him. But at 28 years old, you could, once again, someone you could probably get a little bit of money back for, potentially get 5 or 6 million if he has a really good year under your stewardship. But someone that could definitely slot into most sides or become a decent backup as well, and do a really, really good job. I personally have him on my Fulham save. I haven't had a good time with him, but he's definitely I definitely think that he's a good backup, and as I said, I have him on my Fulham save. Although he's not great, he is someone that fills the gap where absolutely necessary. A player that most Newcastle fans will be heavily aware of. Whether or not they like him or not is a completely different story. But here we have YOANN KABAYE. Once again, a lot of Premier League experience under his belt. Really, really good player for 34 years old. Obviously, his physicals are starting to get worse for wear, I think is the easiest way to say it. But if you look at them, once again, them technicals, a very, very good set piece taker as well, with 14 corners and 14 free kick taken. So if you can make the most out of set pieces with YOANN here, you can definitely get a few goals throughout the season with KABAYE. And once again, them mentals at 16 determination, 16 work rate, 17 teamwork. Someone that is going to work extremely hard for the cause and work extremely hard for the team. And with that 13 leadership as well, he's definitely someone that you could potentially mentor your youngsters with. The only downside to YOANN, I think, is the fact that he is obviously 34 years old. And that's going to be the case for most of these free transfers, is that there's a reason why they're free transfers, is because they're slowly aging on and going to be retiring in the next few years. But once again, it's the same with YAYA. If you can put this guy next to a very mobile midfielder, potentially like Jack Wilshere, someone that can ping balls left, right and centre, and unlock opposition defences. Just don't expect him to run, because if you ask him to run, he's going to go off the pitch crying. So just don't expect that from YOANN here. Everything else, absolutely perfect. But that 10k wage demand as well, very, very reasonable demands for someone with plenty of experience, fantastic mental and technical stats. So yeah, I would get this guy. If you get a trio dream team of YAYA, TOURE, YOANN KABAYE and Jack Wilshere, I mean, you basically won. Like, I don't know what you've won, but you've won something just for bringing back the nostalgia years of when YAYA was pinging balls for Manchester City, KABAYE for Newcastle, and Jack Wilshere being taken off on a stretcher at Arsenal. But yeah, you know, that ended prematurely. Damn. So we are on to the final 3 players on this list, and they are all going to be attacking players. So kickstarting this list is going to be the one and only SAMIR NASRI. Obviously having absolutely bundles of Premier League experience with Arsenal and Manchester City, 2 massive clubs in the Premier League. So he definitely knows how to perform at a high level. Now, some of you may be a little bit surprised with NASRI here, just because obviously 33 years old, you're looking at his stats and you're like, Alex, he's not that great. Like, he's not someone that is going to set the world alight, so to speak. And you are right, he's definitely not going to set the world alight, but because he's very one-dimensional, the stats that he has in that one role that he could probably do very, very well, them stats are absolutely terrific. If you look at his passing, his technique, his vision, his off the ball, his first touch, his dribbling, his composure, decisions, flair, that 13 anticipation, 14 agility. If you play him right behind the striker, basically don't ask him to run, to be an enganche maybe, just sit there in the hole and don't ask him to move. Definitely someone that has the ability to unlock opposition defences. And his versatility as well, being able to play on left mid, left wing, right wing and centre mid. And I don't know why you play him in CDM, but you can play him in CDM as well if absolutely necessary. Obviously at 33 years old, you're not going to get many years out of NASRI here, but if you're playing for a year, 2 years, if you're lucky, definitely someone that can do a very, very good job in that, just behind that striker role. And once again, with them stats that he's got for that role especially, absolutely tremendous. The only other issue I could see with NASRI is that 5 work rate, 10 determination, 10 teamwork. It's not great. It's not someone that you necessarily want to be mentoring youngsters with, but he's not going to be working the team that much. But if you're only going to be keeping him for a year, maybe, perhaps you're looking at this and like, maybe it's not that much of an issue, potentially a risk worth taking with NASRI here just because of the stats that he has. So, yeah, NASRI, you get my thumbs up, mate. Now, this guy that we have on our screen right now is perhaps the only guy that I think on this list that would be able to get into every single side in world football and be able to do a really, really, really good job. And that is Mario Mandzukic. I probably said that wrong. I can only apologise. But yeah, this guy, I don't know how he's a free transfer, but he's a free transfer. I don't care what team you are. Load up FM21 right now and sign Mario, because he's absolutely, I think the word to say is he's absolutely ridiculous for a free transfer. And we'll get onto the wage demands as well, which is absolutely absurd how much he's asking for. But yeah, like, do I need to say anything about Mario here? Obviously, he is 34 years old, which, once again, quite old in terms of footballing age. However, the experience he has with playing some of the biggest sides in Europe, and the mental attributes are making me dribble. I'm not going to lie. The mental attributes are making me fall in love with this guy even more. Like, look at it. Composure, determination, work rate, teamwork, positioning. His physicals are even still pretty good for the age as well. 12 pace, 9 acceleration other than that. Then technicals are decent as well. 14 finishing, 16 heading, 14 technique, 13 passing. Definitely someone that is going to do a job for every single side that he goes to. And once again, we go to the wage demands. 34k Mario's asking for, which is peanuts for most sides. I would 100% get this guy in, because Mario, you're not going to be able to sell him, but you're definitely going to be able to mentor youngsters with him as well, with that absolutely unreal determination, work rate and teamwork. He's going to have a fantastic impact on youngsters. That personality of determined as well. Yeah, he's brilliant. Get this guy in. I'm gutted I missed out on him on my Fulham save. I wished I'd got him, but it is what it is now. But make sure you don't miss out on him. Do not miss out on Mario here. You will regret it. So the final name on this list is a Liverpool legend. Someone that myself and all Liverpool fans cherish in our hearts back in the heyday with Suarez and Sterling is a certain Mr. Daniel Sturridge. Now, obviously, with Daniel, we all know of his horrendous history of injuries, and that is definitely going to be a massive risk with taking Daniel on to any side. He is obviously going to have a massive injury risk, and with that, 8 natural fitness, chances are he's going to get injured quite on a regular basis. But if he manages to stay fit, them stats, the technicals and mentals, he can definitely do a job, especially as an advanced forward or potentially a poacher. Perhaps he doesn't have the physicals to be a poacher with that 11 pace and 12 acceleration. But with that 15 finishing, 16 composure, 16 technique, I have utmost confidence that Daniel here be able to bang in the goals for most sides if given the service. Obviously, at 30 years old, he's not going to be declining just yet, so you could potentially sell him on in a year's time if he's had a very good year with your club. The only issue with Daniel is that he somehow thinks he's a world-class striker playing alongside the world's best players, is that he's asking for £62,000 a week, which for someone that is probably going to be on the injury table more than he's playing, that is a massive, massive ask, and I'm sure most people will be able to negotiate it perhaps to 50k, but it's still a lot of money for someone that perhaps might not be able to play a lot of games. But if you're able to get 20, 25 games, even 15 games out of Daniel, that is going to be a very, very good return. And even if he scores 5 goals for you, that's 5 goals that Daniel has essentially obviously scored. And I feel like that would be a very, very good return for someone that's on a free and 62,000 a week as well. So that was our full list of, in my opinion, the top 10 free transfers in Football Manager 2021. Of course, a lot of people may have different opinions, and that's absolutely fine. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of these players on this list down below. I'm very interested to see any other free transfers that perhaps I've missed out that you've had great success with. And if you have had success with any of these players, feel free to let me know. I'm pretty sure I know that I definitely know some of these players are definitely going to have a massive impact on most teams. But I'll be very interested to see if there's perhaps players that I didn't expect to have a massive impact that has had a massive impact. That was a tongue twister and a half, blimey. But yeah, that was our top 10 list. I am going to do a few honourable mentions just to give you guys, once again, a few other names on your list that you can potentially pick up in your early on in your save. So we'll go on to your honourable mentions, and then we'll say our goodbyes. So yeah, thank you all very much for watching. As I said, if you have any feedback, any constructive criticism, feel free to leave it in the comments below. Obviously, it's a completely different video as to what I normally do on this channel, but I'm definitely going to be doing more of these as I'm a massive fan. I had good fun making this and going to see these players for myself as well. So yeah, if you do have any feedback, feel free to let me know. And once again, let me know of any stories of any free transfers you've had on this year's game. I'll be very interested to find that out. So yeah, thank you all very much for watching. Have a lovely morning, afternoon or evening, and I'll see you soon. Stay safe. Goodbye.